Hi, everyone, and welcome inside Rack Scottsdale for the Sun Devil Source podcast presented by Jones Auto Centers. Gabby Chernoff, Chris Cartman, and Luke Lendler here joining you. We have a Texas Tech review, everything that happened in that game, field rush after the fact, and so much contextually that is very important for just the context of the season. 26-22, the final score from Mountain America Stadium on Saturday. ASU will be right back at home this Saturday against Houston, a team that's been a little bit more impressive than people generally expected them to be. Only one loss on the season so far. As always, we'll have a review of ASU's upcoming matchup against Houston at the end of the episode. But first, off the top, as we always do, Chris, some news, injuries, Dorba and Tyson, the big ones to watch from last weekend. And Tyson, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. Jesus Gomez, third time this season, Special Teams Player of the Week for the Big 12.
Jesus Gomez keeps doing what was expected of him, right? He's made 16 out of 20 field goals. There have been some snapping issues and some other special teams issues that have contributed to him not making a couple of those, but he's second in the country in FBS with 16 makes. Wasn't needed to hit a game winner this week as he has in the past. That's because of the heroics of Sam Levitt, Jordan Tyson, Raleek Brown, and others with that 2-minute drive that they were able to successfully convert into a touchdown and win the game. Jordan Tyson is doing the type of things that Jordan Tyson does. We expected that, right? He is pacing towards a couple ASU records. The one that he looks like he'll probably shatter if he stays healthy. He's got the hamstring. We'll talk about that, but if he's able to play the remainder of ASU's games and in the postseason in a bowl game or more, he could get 100 catches this season. The record is Sean McDonald from 2002, right around 80. So he's like way ahead of that. He's also ahead of the touchdown receptions pace, which was set in 1984, I want to say, with 14. He has 8 on the season so far. He's one of the best receivers in the country. And on the injury aspect of this, he did pull his hamstring. He wasn't sure, seemingly, whether that was a cramp or, more than that when he got hurt in the third quarter. But then, of course, he had several big receptions after that, continued to play. He did the fake injury dance thing. Kenny Dillingham was asked about injuries today at his weekly press conference, and basically it was, we're going to learn more about the situation. Prince Dorba was celebrating in their victory camera thing when the players came off the field back toward the locker room. So that seems like a positive sign for them. And we're going to get a lot more clarity of this in Tuesday's practice.
Yeah, Tyson went down like right in front of me. It was a couple plays before his touchdown, ASU's first of the game, and the way they were kind of, I guess, managing it just looked like a cramp. They had trainers over, they were just kind of stretching out his hamstring. Kenny Dillingham came over as well, and then he was, poking fun at it, like you said, with the celly afterwards. And then he said after the game, too, he said, I think I might have pulled it. And he was sitting next to Boogie Wilson, and he was like, "You're not supposed to say that, man. You can't say that." So that was kind of a funny interaction. But on that subject of Jordan Tyson, ASU's game-winning drive in that Texas Tech game, it looked like Texas Tech was going to lose pretty decisively towards the end of that game, and then some
ASU
special teams blunders. Yep, jinx. We'll get into that a little bit later. That's a whole thing, and Kenny Dillingham acknowledged that as well. But in that game-winning drive, Sam Levitt, great improvisational play to Tyson. Raleek Brown eventually in for the touchdown. So what do you guys just think of how ASU responded after kind of getting punched in the gut there towards the end of the game?
Well, I wrote about it a little bit in my sidebar after the game, but with the way Levitt kind of carried himself onto the field before that drive and the way the team seemed to rally and have this attitude, like they hadn't just gone 3 and out with what felt like the game on the line. They'd just gone 3 and out. They really had struggled. They had not looked like the offense they were in the first quarter or in the second quarter, in the second half at all. But Levitt walked out there. I don't want to compare him to the greatest football player of all time because he's not Tom Brady. But Tom Brady always had this air about him where he walked out to every drive the same. At no point was he walking out looking nervous, shaken. And that's what I saw from Levitt yesterday. He walked out onto the field, took a couple warm-up throws, pulled Raleek Brown, pulled the offensive line aside. Raleek said it in the post-game press conference. He said, Sam just told us it's just like practice. It's just like the Dickey Dome. It's just like Kajikawa. Go out there. We've done this dozens of times in practice. And that's exactly what he did. We've seen so many college quarterbacks this season with the expectations that Levitt had coming into the season, look like their hands are shaking with the game on the line. I mean, one down all the way down there in Texas, Arch Manning in the first week of the season had the same chance that Levitt had, pull off this huge win, and clearly didn't have what it took on that last drive. Levitt has separated himself from other guys in the country in that aspect. Could he have played a cleaner game to get to that point? Absolutely. Could he even have had a slightly cleaner final drive? Sure, he had a couple incompletions here and there, but at the end of the day, he made the plays necessary. And that, to me, is the biggest growth I think we've seen from Sam Levitt from even his first start last season. Last year, the X factor was number 4. The X factor was Cam Scadaboo. This year, the X factor was expected to be number 10 early on. And after, like he mentioned, and like I have talked about, Levitt put very high expectations on himself before the season. And that clearly hindered him a little bit in the first opening weeks. But now we've seen, especially as Big 12 play has started, and each game matters more and more. This guy, at least in the fourth quarter so far, has really shown an ability that's unlike a lot of other quarterbacks in the country to kind of calm down the nerves of his team, to instill confidence in the players in his team. He makes other guys make plays. He is really, at least in this game against Texas Tech, and he's shown it so far this season, did a very good job allowing his best players to be their best, especially on that fourth down, Tyson.
But put some respect on his name, man. He did it last season too. ASU had the most wins in school history that were one-score games last year. You're not doing that just because you have Cam Scadaboo, obviously. There was plenty of games last year where, with the game on the line, he delivered. And the reality, I think, is that he just has a special quality about him that shows up best. And it's his mobility, it's his situational feel. The play that Gabby referenced was a 4th and 2 where, Jordan Tyson ran a shallow out route and Sam Levitt was rolling that direction, and they have such good chemistry and feel for each other in situations that Tyson knew automatically, okay, scramble drill, I got to break up. He's wide open. Levitt hits him. A lot of guys, they might short arm that or have a problem connecting, and he didn't. And I think it helped that they knew that 3 points would tie the game.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus Gomez is such a weapon that 2 minutes, that's plenty of time in college football. It's not like you're rushed or anything like that. And Texas Tech had given up some shot plays earlier in the game. Jaron Hamilton, you got Jordan Tyson on your team. That puts, I think, a defense a little bit more on its heels. Mm-hmm. And you have to credit ASU's protection in a game against David Bailey, who is an elite pass rusher. Romello Height is an extremely good pass rusher. That duo is as good as anybody in FBS at getting to the quarterback. ASU had a really good plan in this game, chipping with its tight ends, getting the ball, throwing the ball to its tight ends and its running backs. I think Sam Levitt was in a better rhythm. I agree with your point. In the second half, they weren't as productive, but had they just turned more of their drives into touchdowns earlier in the game, which really I don't think that was his fault necessarily. It wouldn't even been in the situation that it ended up being. But from the field, I just didn't think that ASU. I didn't think it was a doom and gloom scenario. I thought ASU had a good chance to go down and do exactly what it did. If anything, there was a little bit of concern about being on the goal line situation, given what had happened at Mississippi State, what had happened in other games this year, and the natural progression of ASU season being one that's included a lot of struggles in goal line situations. They went unbalanced on that play. This is, I think, pretty important, is they moved Josh Atkins from left tackle over to the right side to give them an extra blocker. They had Malik McLean, Jordan Tyson, Shema Mateer all blocking on the play side. And then they had an unbalanced another tight end in the aligned like a left tackle. And they did that so that they can get more bodies. And they also, I think it was a quick huddle and go kind of a situation, which makes it harder for a defense to get set up. And they tried it earlier in the game, and that was actually when Makua Pule was called for a false start, and then they didn't go back to it again until the ultimate touchdown that decided the game. And so you have to give credit to Marcus Arroyo and the offense for their ability to execute in that situation against one of the best defensive lines in the Big 12, if not the country.
And when you play a defensive line that good, the defensive line will so often dictate the pace of the game. I felt as though Arizona State's offensive game plan was executed very well upon, like you said, but also dictated the pace of play. When they wanted to go hurry up, the defense had to match them. When they wanted to slow it down, the defense had to match them. And they did a really good job, especially in the first half, when the pass rush is that good, the quarterback can't hold on to the ball too long. They did a good job calling these quick in-breaking, quick out-breaking routes, checkdowns. Leavitt did a good job not trying to play hero ball in this big moment. That's what really establishes rhythm early. 1-step, 2-step drops. First look, if it's not there, second look, bang, and go. That's, I think, what they did a really good job of, not trying to kind of let themselves become prisoners of their opponent and instead dictate the flow of the game and play their style.
Yes, yeah. I think it may sound weird, but I think in a way Sam Leavitt getting hurt may have actually helped him and ASU, because early on in the season, so much was put on him. I think he was scrambling too much prematurely. They didn't have a rhythm from the pocket as a passer, the things that they had hoped to accomplish and that they expected from what Dillingham and Marcus Arroyo said all offseason. It just really wasn't there. But the fact that he gets hurt and then he's more pocket oriented in practice where he's not scrambling, he knows, okay, I'm going to have to be able to get the ball out quickly and on time, be a rhythm passer. That showed up in this game where and I think Marcus Arroyo called a very good game in terms of block releases from his tight end, getting Shimon Mateer involved in the alley, getting the ball to Raleek Brown. And so all of these things coming together, I think, really portend well to where ASU's at offensively as it moves into the final stretch of its season.
Yeah, and just the way Sam Leavitt is wired, we've heard so much just about how he kind of thinks about things, and a lot of praise from Kenny Dillingham about just the kind of kid and the kind of mindset he has. He said after the game on Saturday, we were on our way to the Utah game, and I just started bawling on the bus. So you have to imagine that the way he's wired, that kind of emotional aspect, having to sit out, watch his team lose, you got to imagine there's in the locker room some sort of internal or collective awareness of the fact that if we lose this game, our chances at the Big 12 championship game and the CFP go down very drastically to almost zero. So for Sam Leavitt to come out and perform the way he did, especially in that game-winning drive, was just huge for ASU and its offense. But that was an impressive moment for sure. Kind of, I guess, I don't know if I would call it a close second, but I think two of the they're very lonely at the top in that game. ASU's defense, and you and I talked about this in the post-game show too, with the way it performed at Utah, you don't expect a bounce-back performance of that magnitude, especially against the number 7 team in the country. They were just incredible. So we're going to take a look at some of the defensive highlights from that ASU Texas Tech game and then let you guys give your full thoughts. All right, your guys' thoughts on the defense. That was obviously a pretty long mount that we put together because there was just so much to look at and so much to be impressed by.
I mean, this is the number one offense in the Big 12 heading this game. This offense had
in
the country.
Yeah.
This offense had other teams probably begging for mercy rules in the second half heading into this game. ASU's defense was coming off one of the worst performances that we had seen from a Brian Ward coach unit since the first year when they had a pretty significant talent deficit to the other teams they were playing. And for them to put together this kind of performance. I think we're going to talk about it later. A big part of it was the physicality in practice, and very impressive that they turned it around so quickly. But there was a certain cohesion to how they played, in my opinion, how each group of the defense kind of aided the other ones. The linebackers did a really good job, especially on these. They didn't give up a third and short or third and medium almost, it felt like, in the entire first half. And it's because I thought, especially on these mesh concepts, it seemed to trip up a lot of linebackers and cornerbacks. They run into each other. They have communication problems. The communication was very, very good from ASU's defense, amidst probably one of the most frenzied environments they've seen in the last 2 years, with how the sold-out crowd and how intense the fan environment was. But their communication on those plays was very important. And then C-ball, hit ball. That's exactly what they were in the first half. It's what they were in the third quarter. You could tell their legs might have gotten away from them a little bit in the second half, but again, special teams wasn't massively entirely all the defense's fault. But at the end of the day, this was cohesion was really the word that came to mind for me because of how connected this unit was from top to bottom. It wasn't one cornerback shutting down one side of the field and one pass rusher doing great on the right side. It was an entire unit playing together, playing for each other, and each player was basically taking turns making the big play of the drive. It felt like there wasn't really one player on defense that stood above the rest because of how good each member of the unit played.
Yeah, see, I think Texas Tech may have done ASU a favor by not being more committed to the run earlier on in the game. We know that ASU's secondary and especially its corners are really good players. Texas Tech had just one explosive pass in the entire game, which just illustrates how difficult that it is for receivers to get on top of their players in the passing game. They really squeezed everything in front of them. Fourth quarter, they hit on some balls on Javen Robinson's side, including the touchdown, but that was set up by really bad miscues by special teams. The physical element of the game is what I think all of us were not sure that ASU would be able to bring after what had happened in Utah. And then backup quarterback who's more mobile, more designed quarterback run stuff. And they went to some of that. Didn't work almost at all effectively. It's not that I said this on the postgame show, but it's not that we really thought that, okay, ASU has a soft defense. Kane Dillingham said that he felt like he got soft. But I didn't think that was, something that we would see continue to be a trend line in this game. And they took it to heart, I think, what happened, and they came with a different sense of purpose. And the style of offense that Texas Tech plays is a lot more similar to what ASU sees every day in practices, which I think was a comfort for them. And you could just see that the way that the players reacted to the run plays, like they were quick and they were accurate in terms of their feel and assessment for what was going on the field. And so that allowed them to kind of be comfortable early on. They got those 3 and outs from the outset. It got them into a rhythm. Texas Tech only had 1 first down in like the first 4 or 5 drives.
Yep.
And was in third and long a lot. And when you're in third and long against this defense, that's not a good place to be. And then that gave, I think, the Sun Devils a lot of comfort in, okay, this is who we are, not the thing that we displayed that was really terrible last week. I've never really had any questions about Brian Ward as a coordinator structurally in terms of what he does, the design of the scheme, all that stuff I think is good. It just was a very weird thing what happened in Utah with players being asked to run fit against style of play that they hadn't seen this year, and a mobile quarterback who's so run first, and then the conditions that they were in with the wet and rainy and windy, and then not having Sam Levitt. I think you put all that together, and it was just so different for those guys that they ended up just having a terrible, laid an egg performance. And we weren't sure that they'd bring it back to the types of things that we've seen from them more recently, but they did it in spades. And again, I think Texas Tech should have been more committed to the run early on to try to take that physical edge. Very good offensive line play by Texas Tech up to that point in the season. But I also would say that having not really been tested with their schedule by a team like ASU earlier. Like, yeah, they beat Utah, but that game kind of got lopsided, and it didn't really have that cohesive challenge that I think was present in this game on Saturday. It was quite something to behold.
And I think it's important to note when they played Utah, that was the first game. Believe that was either the first or second Big 12 game.
Yeah.
It was, September. There wasn't this kind of weight to it. This game had been circled. I'm going to assume both teams, even though Kenny Dillingham will never admit that he looks at games down the road, you got to think players on this team might think this is the biggest game of the season.
Especially if your man gets tested and you just lost.
Especially in the context. You asked Kenny Monday after the Utah game if he felt like that performance was anomalous. What was anomalous was everything else that surrounded it. It was anomalous that they were in that weather. It was anomalous they were playing that scheme. So for what
without
Sam Levitt, it was just everything that went into that game is not something that would be often repeated. And you have to take what they faced and say, well, that won't be repeated a lot, and probably look at their performance and say that may not be repeated a lot. But obviously, some important changes in practice played a big part in them kind of getting back after that loss.
Yeah, definitely a confirmation in identity after maybe kind of losing it, which can be kind of mentally discombobulating for a team. I'm sure a lot of fans were kind of up in arms, as they are anytime something doesn't go completely perfectly 100% how they want it to go. But a lot of solidarity now in this ASU team's identity, especially defensively, after what happened last week at Utah. And Keyshawn Elliott even said after that Texas Tech game, I couldn't look at my phone. I couldn't go on social media because of what people were saying about how our defense played. Like, it was downright embarrassing. And Kenny Dillingham echoed that sentiment, said, yes, it was embarrassing. But just like you guys touched on, none of this would be possible. I mean, I guess I don't know, like, definitively to say that, but a big reason why it was possible is because of how Kenny Dillingham altered the practice structure. Live tackling Tuesday and Wednesday. Raleek Brown talked after the game that, Wednesday's usually a little bit of a lighter day, easier practice, but they were live tackling, really up the physicality this week, and it bode well for that ASU team, obviously, as we saw. So here's what Kenny Dillingham had to say after the Texas Tech game, kind of just in reflection of the week and preparation ahead of it.
One, the fans to show up the way they did, our players to not cower. When you have a loss like that, you can go down a rabbit hole. And a lot of people go down a rabbit hole, whether that's football or life. You can go down a rabbit hole in those moments. And our guys didn't go down a rabbit hole. We went live period 3, and not one person flinched. It's not me. It's what we are. We say have more fun working harder than anybody in the country. You can't have fun and not work harder than anybody in the country. It doesn't work like that. You have to have more fun working harder than anybody in the country. And I lost that, and we had it back this week. And, we'll never – ever, as long as I'm coaching, not practice to the physical level like we did this week again. The reason we could win this game is because we lost the game prior. We don't win this game if we beat Utah. We don't win this game if we have close versus Utah. We only won this game because we were so embarrassed that our guys had a different level of intensity and focus, and we found it. And now the challenge is, through the praise, can we continue to have it? And so I would say it's a positive, but it can also be a negative if we don't use it to continue to drive us.
I think one of my favorite, jargony slogans that people use is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting the same result. And Kenny Dillingham mentioned that at some point this week
expecting a different result.
Expecting a different result. That's what I meant. Sorry. I promise I know what I know the saying. But he didn't fall victim to that. It forced him and the team to look in the mirror and say, hey, something didn't work. We can't let it define us. He said, it's one game. It only counts as one loss. And they bounced back perfectly from it. So, I mean, what did you guys make of just the practice structure and kind of watching very closely after that Utah loss last week?
Well, we hadn't seen them barking back and forth at each other in practice like that, the defense and the offense, since Camp Tontozona, since the end of training camp, when Dillingham stood up in front of the media and was like, well, these guys just want to get out in the field. They just want to play. They're all riled up. This was the most riled up we had seen that unit in weeks. And when college football teams have defeats like ASU did against Utah, they're always going to, these guys are competitors, they're athletes. They're always going to try to bounce back with this fire and this passion. That will probably lead to, a couple words exchanged, practice some big hits, but that can be good. It can also be very bad. You walk a very fine line when you do that. What separates the teams that bounce back well and the teams that repeat their poor performances is, in my opinion, the culture of the team and how these guys are barking each other in practice, but at no point were fingers being pointed, saying, at no point was anybody on offense waving their hand and saying we lost that game because of the defense. At no point was anybody on defense waving their hand and saying, we lost that game because of the offense. These guys all want the same thing. And I think it's commendable that Dillingham has put such a culture in place where everybody wants the same thing. They are challenging each other in these practices because they want to elevate the way and the output that the team plays. And I thought that was made very, very apparent this week in those two practices. They were thumping, they were yapping, they were barking, and both units had really good days. It was kind of one of those rare practices where both units can be like, yeah, this was a good day. We earned this ice bath. We both played really well. We challenged each other. We raised the standard. And I do want to say, in terms of physicality during the game, Montana Warren snaps. Got the most snaps he'd gotten in weeks. When you're playing a physical, athletic opponent like Texas Tech, you want a physical, downhill guy like Montana Warren. We saw it on the turnover. It was kind of his moment, a very good matchup for him. You and I have talked about how Warren and Breedlove are both good at different things. Maybe they're matchup-based. This was Montana Warren's matchup, and I thought he proved it.
Yes, a few things. So first, the reason that they took a more relaxed approach to their bye week was because of how banged up that they have been. And so there's two schools of thought. The first is I have a veteran team, and we need to kind of rest our guys up to get them healthy for this next big, bare knuckle brawl stage of our schedule with Utah and Texas Tech. And I trust that when we get to those games, they're going to be ready to go, like itching to go, and we're going to have that. And then the other school of thought is that if you take your foot off the gas, you're not going to be putting enough through your engine. Mm-hmm. And I think that the most impressive thing to me about Kenny Dillingham, just in general, is his ability to self-assess and course correct. And he makes changes in a hurry. So, like, for example, 2 years ago, he didn't like the way things were going with his offensive coordinator first one that he hired, took away play calling duties, put it upon himself, then made a change. A lot of coaches would have stuck with the same coordinator a second year, didn't want to admit that you were wrong, didn't want to look bad because of the decision that you made, and then you would have exacerbated the problem. He always has this natural tendency to look inward and say, what did I do that was wrong, or at least could have been better, and then move on from there. And what happens, and I've talked about this, numerous times, but it then allows all your players and everybody that works underneath of you to all be like, oh, hey, like he's admitting the things that he's wrong or could have done better. I got to do that too. And when you talk about the culture, that's where it stems from. It stems from everybody that likes him and they want to do well for him, and they have natural, honest, transparent relationships. And then he says, guys, I let you down because I should have been pushing you harder to get you ready for Utah, despite our injuries, rather than doing what I did. And I didn't think that they would be able to quickly enough re-engage in that warrior mentality to have the success that they did. Like in Tuesday's practice, out of nowhere in their first 11 on 11, he goes, okay, we're going live with the second team. And then everyone was like, oh, we're live. We don't do that. We haven't done that all season. And then guys were hitting. They were thudding up pretty good. And then after that, they went live with the ones. And I was like, whoa, that never happens in 2025 college football during the season. And then in Wednesday's practice, they did it again. And in Wednesday's practice, we saw Ghost Rouser really put a good hit on Jordan Tyson. And then they got up and they were jawing back and forth at each other. And then it was Prince Dorber from the sidelines who shouted, that's what we need. That's what we need. And I think they were right. And Xavier Alford, who hasn't been able to play due to injury for the last 5 games, you could tell, like coaching guys on the sidelines, he's an emotional leader. And I didn't know that would carry over as well as it did to the game. But clearly, when Dillingham broke the huddle to end practice, he said, we're not just going to talk about being about it, we're going to be about it. And then they showed that they are about it, and that really is more of who they are. And it was true that what I had asked them about whether Utah was anomalous or not proved to be the case. And they're going to still have to show that in this game and in subsequent weeks. But I'm a believer that the physical, bring it when it matters type of a team that we saw on Saturday is going to be there for the rest of the way.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's kind of always stood out to me about Kenny Dillingham is that anytime something bad happens, he says, it's my fault. He said that again this week. At the end of the day, anything that happens with this team, it's my fault. The blame falls on me. But then, they have success like they did this weekend. He's sitting next to Sam Levitt in the press conference, and Sam's trying to be like, oh, he called this play. It worked. It was great. And Kenny Dillingham throws it right back on him. So definitely, he takes ownership for everything. So kind of, I guess it's unspoken that whether that's good or bad, he takes full ownership of it, but he doesn't outwardly say it, and that's something that trickles down into the culture and the success of a team.
He gives the credit to the players, and he takes the blame on himself. And these guys, everybody's got their phones all the time, right? They're all consuming what their coach is saying about them. And they're seeing, wait a second, this dude is great. We're the ones who didn't execute the plays. We're going to go break down all of our film, and we're going to see the struggles that we all had over and over, the missed tackles and the assignment errors and all that stuff. They know. But then their coach is up there saying, hey, that was my fault. I put them in a bad situation. We weren't able to be successful because of me, our prep, our game plan, whatever. And the players are like, man, that's the type of guy that I respect and want to play for. And I think that just helps them stay cohesive and connected and bought into what they're trying to be. And they already, again, it's a veteran team, so they already know kind of what it takes at some level, and that when they trust the process and that they're focused on process and not results, they get the things that they want, and they just needed to recenter on that. One of the things that Dillingham said that really stuck with me is they were maybe 5 degrees or 7 degrees off of their course. It wasn't like they needed to make a 90-degree turn to get back to. They went a little bit off for a couple weeks. Okay, let's boom. And we saw what happened. He didn't say who he spoke with, but he spoke with a couple of coaches that are friends of his and asked, about what happened and why he decided to have an easier 2-week period before that game. And he said, I'm never going to do that again. Like, we're going to be who we are, which is we're going to have more fun practicing harder than anyone in the country, the mantra that we've all heard him say 1,000 times.
And he definitely had some fun after the game in the locker room. There was a great video.
No AI.
Not AI, but if you ask Kenny Dillingham, it is AI. So if you didn't see it, which I don't know how you haven't seen it if you're an ASU fan who is on the internet at any point in
this is real.
The day. This is real. And I have to be honest, the first time I saw it, I was like, there's no way that's real.
I thought it was AI too. I was like, he's not moving like that. Kenny, he's moving like that. He's a dad. He's moving like that. My dad can't do that.
He was a good basketball player. Like, he had a couple knee surgeries, has patellar tendon that he blew out a year ago or whatever. But yeah, he was doing it.
Yeah, I 100% thought that was AI for the first probably like 3/4 of the video, and then it zooms out and it's like all the players' faces like very clear, like very recognizable, and I was like, yeah, that's Keith Abney. AI can't really do that. So I feel like that, you see him having fun, and even when he walked in here for the podcast that we had him at, you guys at the front said he was just like chopping it up with us. He's like a 30-year-old frat guy, just someone super easy to talk to and just kind of shoot with. And so you feel like that passion combined with the fact that he really is just a normal guy, that kind of is almost an unspoken recruiting tactic. Like you said, people are on their phones all the time. You see Kenny Dillingham constantly taking responsibility. You look at that if you're a recruit and say, that's probably the kind of coach that I want to play for. So that combined with a multitude of other things, there were a handful of pretty high profile recruits at that Texas Tech game as well, which we'll get into later. But just to kind of cap off this segment, here's a couple of those interactions between Sam Levitt and Kenny Dillingham where they were like, no, it's all you. And then, no, it's all you.
Bromance going on.
Bromance.
It's just a testament to the way, him and Sam work. They work, they care, they prepare, they do everything they can to get on the field. JT's probably going to be up here at the crack of dawn tomorrow in the ice tub. That's what they do. This dude sitting next to me, I've never been around a guy who just works to try to win football games as much as he does on and off the field. His body, he'll go I mean, he just does everything he can for this football team, and in the biggest moments, he makes the biggest plays. It's because he plays the Clash of the Clans or whatever?
Clash Royale.
Clash Royale, there it is. I don't do crap. He does it all. So he's going to be nice, but I don't do crap. These wins are his.
No, he's being modest. I mean, honestly, throughout the week, you talk about a coach that just knows your players well. So he knows how to approach you in those moments, and talk about someone who talks about every single scenario there is. And as soon as I come in, what game were we watching?
We were watching Miami versus
Louisville. Yeah, right before half. There's a little debate, on what they should have done with the clock management. And we're just coming in right there at the meeting, and I'm talking about what I think we should do versus what he thinks, and that's what happens on game day. We're just on the same page. So it's one of the best situations for me to play in.
We touched on Sam Levitt in this ASU offense briefly at the top of this episode, but kind of an interesting, very impressive stat in this Sam Levitt second year as ASU starting quarterback. In one-score games since he's been the starter and games that he's played in, ASU is 10-3, and Sam Levitt is 6-1 against ranked opponents. So, Chrissy said give credit where credit is due. I feel like those stats just kind of speak for themselves.
Yeah, and people like to use game manager as a very derogatory word against quarterbacks. I think I'm worried to assess Sam Levitt as somebody who is very good at managing games, because then people might see him not as the difference maker that he is. But he is. It helps when your quarterback can manage the game, can slow things down, can slow everyone's heartbeat down, and can instill confidence in the weapons around him. We've seen it time and time again in these one-score games. When Levitt has the ball in the fourth quarter, his play elevates to where he will always want it to be, especially against these ranked opponents. 6-1. I didn't do deep research. I would doubt there's any other college quarterback in the country, maybe not more than a couple, that are at that level against ranked opponents in those kind of close games. Levitt is very good improvisationally, very good in scheme, and is very good when those lights are the brightest. And when you're a team that suddenly has this weight of expectations like Arizona State got after such a good performance last year, it is certainly an asset that you can use, especially in these games that now have increasing importance as the week goes on.
I just think his confidence level is so high. A lot of people tend to wilt or get nervous in these moments, and I don't see that whatsoever with him. And when you add on top of that his mobility, the escapability, you're not going to sack him. He almost never have we seen him get sacked in these big moments. A lot of quarterbacks, they turtle and they cower and they go down. He's able to have such good quick processing of what's happening on the field. And what when Dillingham gave him credit is guys were all covered on that fourth down play. And he's like, nope, I'm just going to dive out here. My number one target, I have a great feel for him. He's going to go that direction. I'm going to throw the ball in rhythm to him. We're going to make a big play. And we've seen it so many times from him. I didn't expect it at all last year. It was such a shock because guys never started before, a team that didn't have the culture, having come off a 3-win season. How are they going to win all these close games? And then you just see them piling up, and they just got better and more confident. And yeah, they had Scadaboo, and that was a big thing. But this year, even without that, I'm never going to bet against them in those moments, especially with they're going to have two of the best players on the field, him being one of them, almost every single time. And yeah, when is there anybody in the country? I'm going to put you on the spot. Is there anybody in your college football aficionado that you'd rather have leading your drive in the fourth down? Your team is tied or losing. This was supposed to be this amazing quarterback class, and everybody, and they haven't actually done all that well.
Yeah, probably not. Definitely not Beck. Definitely not Aller. Mendoza maybe because of how well he just played against Oregon on the road, but at no point was he down. That game they were winning the entire time. We haven't seen Mendoza down late in games needing to come back. That's probably it. It's probably Levitt, Mendoza, because we didn't see Oregon's Dante Moore. We didn't see Dante Moore do it.
I like him.
He's very good. And he did a good job against Penn State, but he didn't do it against Indiana.
Right.
Levitt is at least so far this season, because mentioned they gave him a loss on that record for the Mississippi State game. He gave his team the lead in that game. He went right down the field after probably one of the worst regular season, if not the regular season performances performances period we have ever seen from him. He still marched his team downfield in the final minutes and took the lead. Obviously, they lost in those explosive plays. We talked about that. We've kind of beaten that dead horse over and over again. But he still has a good track record that, honestly, only Mendoza, we haven't even seen him do it yet.
I was surprised in the Peach Bowl that he just didn't keep scoring touchdowns. Like, I'm just like, that was a little bit surprising to me, the way that game ended, just given what we've seen from him. But Saturday, I kind of expected it was either going to go to overtime or ASU was going to win the game. Only reason I thought that it might not be a win in regulation was the red zone / goal line issues. But and it's just so smart of Dillingham to the stuff that Levitt went through, not playing, the foot. Dillingham handled all of that just brilliantly, I would say. Like calling out the fake rumors about basketball as disgusting and talking about how playing and wanting to play means more to Levitt than anybody else. What he went through last year with the broken ribs and only missing one game. I just think that it's a microcosm, their relationship and the way that Levitt plays and the way that he is empowered by his coaching staff to feel the way that he feels. I think all of that kind of comes together in a way that has led to ASU being in this position that it's in.
And I think Sam Levitt's abilities as a playmaker were almost kind of, I want to say, desensitized to just like how impressive a lot of the stuff he's doing is, because like you mentioned, if it were just about any other quarterback in the country making a play that Sam Levitt kind of routinely makes, you look at it and you say, oh my gosh, that was incredible. But Sam Levitt is just so consistent in how well he plays the game and how well he sees the field and makes something out of what is seemingly nothing, that it's just, another day at the office for Sam Levitt.
I caught myself on Friday. I was watching the Louisville versus Miami game. Miami needed a touchdown. They were driving. Carson Beck, this guy who first in Heisman odds after about 4 weeks. People thought he would be a first-round pick last year. He's driving down the field. He throws this putrid interception. And my first question is, why didn't he bail out of why didn't he roll right there? Why didn't he roll left there? Why didn't he go try to create? Because I am so used to watching what Levitt does. And, people might not like to give him as much credit as he probably deserves for how he's played this season and last season. But the fact of the matter is he's turning eyes more and more as these weeks go on and on. Of course, the question is, will he be able to do it consistently? Based on what I've seen, you don't get a lot of college quarterbacks that can do what he can do, and especially what he's done so far.
He gets, I think last season we saw it, this season we've seen it. He gets better. Arroyo gets a better feel for how to manage the personnel around Levitt. And when the game is on the line, he goes to a different place. Mm-hmm. He made several throws or decisions in that game that were not good, where he's throwing the ball into double coverage, or he hits a guy by throwing behind somebody, or he misses. And he didn't have a very good start to the season, I don't think, but he played well against Baylor and TCU and didn't play against Utah, obviously. And then this was maybe, I think, his best performance. But a big part of that was that Arroyo did a good job of putting him in positions to be successful, even more so than I think was the case early on in the season. And that's why I think that winning that game gets a head of steam behind ASU with another home game following it. Everybody of the right mindset and mentality. They have not been a turnover-prone team. They put 2 balls on the ground.
Yep, lucky.
That probably reminded some people, this is before your time, that reminded some people of Michael Eubank, who was a quarterback who who they had a Eubank package, and he replaced Taylor Kelly in some of these goal line situations when Dillingham was a graduate assistant. And that he had a fumble, and that was a thing. I don't know that we're going to see Jeff Sims back out there again in those situations. But if they take care of the football, remember, turnover margin, ASU was first last year in the Big 12 turnover margin in the regular season. Texas Tech was first going into this game. ASU won the turnover margin partly because those fumbles were recovered, including, I think, Jordan Tyson recovered one of the fumbles.
He fell on the Sims one by the goal line.
Super impressive for that. Also, that's as big as any play he made in the whole game. And ASU won the turnover margin, which elevated it to a top 20 team in the country in that category. And that category is going to be so determinative down the stretch.
You and I were sitting right next to each other in the press box. You asked me, you said, Luke, who's going to win this game? I said, Chris, the team that gets the next turnover
You
is
were
going to
right.
win this game. 2 plays later, Martell Hughes hauls one in. ASU won the game.
That was an amazing play. We're going to get to that in a little bit.
We certainly are. We have a quick word from our presenting sponsor, Jones Auto Centers, and we've talked about just how much there was to be impressed by with ASU. After our ad break here, we'll get into kind of the glaringly obvious thing that needs improvement: ASU special teams, and then our sly moves of the week, presented by jerkonthesly.com after that. But until then, here is a quick word from Jones Auto Centers. Welcome back inside Rack Scottsdale for the Sun Devil Source podcast presented by Jones Auto Centers. Like I mentioned, ASU's special teams, I'm sure a lot of concern around that. So we're going to break it all down for you. Before that, here's just a couple of those plays that have caused much concern. And Kenny Dillingham's, that was atrocious and unacceptable comments after the game.
Hide your eyes. Look, if you have one stray bad play in a game on special teams, right? You give up a 40-yard return, or you have a bad snap, right? Or you get, the worst would be like a block punt or a block field goal or something. If it happens once, you go, okay, that's okay. If you have 3, 4, 5 of those things in a huge game, that is a catastrophe. And that is what happened in that game. Watching ASU football a long time. Most kickers at home games in Mountain America Stadium, when it's not windy, they're knocking the ball out of the back of the end zone. So as good as Jesus Gomez has been on field goals, they're not trying to allow teams to return some of these balls. Like they did at the end with the squib kick, but the reason you're doing a squib kick is because you're not confident in the ability to knock the ball out of the back of the end zone. And we've seen opponents come into Mountain America Stadium and do that. I've seen lots of ASU kickers over the year be able to do that. ASU gave them a 56-yard kickoff return. On that play, they had one player, I think it was Martell Hughes, who's normally one of their best special teams players, so I'm not trying to signal anybody out, but he kind of got washed down, blocked really hard out of his lane. Ball breaks up. Okay, that's a problem. And then you go, okay, well, if that's the only thing that happens, that's reasonable, right? Well, no, that was not nearly the only thing that happened. They also had a punt blocked in the fourth quarter that was a jailbreak on their line, and like 3 or 4 guys were at the halo, and this guy's going to make a decision. Who do I block? That's not good. He blocks the inside guy. That's what you're supposed to do. Outside guy gets a piece of it. Fortunately for ASU, bounded forward, but then that gets returned, and then they had after that they had a super shallow punt by Canyon Floyd, who's been playing with he's had missed several games. He's playing with a quad injury. Got to make that clear. But you can't have a short punt that gets returned all the way to the doorstep, and then the very next play, Texas Tech takes a lead. That's like 3 plays. They also had a snap that was really high that Floyd had to like jump and reach to the right for. They had a bad snap on one of their field goals that Floyd was able to save and bring back. They had a punt that hit one of their own players and was live that went out of bounds. They were fortunate on. It's like 5, 6 plays at this point. In a defensive, close-scoring game especially, that's going to be ultra glaring. You can't have it happen. Kenny Dillingham said today that he made all of the players stay for their special teams meeting. He took ownership of the meeting. He said, we got to get better at this. You guys got to understand how important that it is. Charlie Ragle, it's been a tough situation for him because he's getting a lot of criticism really throughout the season and this week social media, in the Devil Sanctuary on our message board. A lot of people are really unhappy with what's going on. Jesus Gomez has kind of saved the day and made it, not look completely terrible after their field goal kicking was atrocious last season. But they may need to make some changes with, you're not going to be able to get a new punter, but you may need to make some changes with what you're doing structurally in your return game with who's on the field. Maybe you need to play your starters more on some of these special teams units and make some other changes. Maybe you got another long snapper. Maybe you need to go to another long snapper. You got to do some things that are different to try to fix this, because it very easily could have cost them a game already this season, could have cost them the game on Saturday. And when you're playing a bunch of these close games, you don't want to need Sam Levitt to bail you out in your offense in the fourth quarter with these 2-minute drives. Texas Tech never should have led that game in the fourth quarter, and the only reason that it happened was because of ASU's special teams failures.
Yeah, definitely the glaringly obvious thing that was wrong from the weekend. Kind of a similar approach after what happened at Utah with the defense and just kind of the team as a whole. It forces you to look in the mirror and make a change so that it doesn't continue happening. But Kenny Dillingham, like you said, made the entire team watch special teams film after that game. So here's his full thoughts from today, just about how everything went down and how he's handling the special team situation.
We're struggling on special teams. I think we just got to focus more in on detail. Like, we're not squeezing edges. We're not doing fundamental stuff well. So we kept the entire team in special teams meeting today, every coach, every player, and I said, I'm going to run this thing. We're going to watch every clip, and we're going to get this fixed. So that's a priority for me to try to improve that area of our football team. Yeah, just really bad football. Bad football, embarrassingly bad football that I'm going to get fixed. So like I said, we kept the entire team in our special teams meeting today. And we said, we're going to watch every one of these plays together. Quarterbacks, O-line, I don't care. You're staying in here because everybody needs to understand how important this was to winning and losing a football game. And I haven't done a good enough job making sure people understand the importance. And it was a reality check this last week for us as a football team to get better at that area. And there's going to be an improved intensity, an improved effort, an improved mindset in those phases of the game, because that was just unacceptable.
Welcome back inside Rack Scottsdale for the Sun Devil Source podcast presented by Jones Auto Centers. Gabby Chernoff, Chris Carbon, Luke Lendler bringing you all the analysis from Texas Tech and a Houston preview, or a Houston first look here in just a second. You just heard a quick word from our sponsor, drinkonthesly.com. If you want to give them a taste, they sell it at Sky Harbor. They're at a few select retailers around the valley, or you can come on down to Rack Scottsdale. Get yourself, I'm sure they would sell you just a can of Sly. You can get it with one of our other sponsors, Devil's Vodka, El Bandito, Yankee Tequila as well. They'll make you a little mixer, Red Bull, vodka Red Bull, or vodka Sly. But our Sly moves of the week. So we're going to start off with our defensive play of the week that obviously is going to go to Martell Hughes' interception that set up the Sun Devils for their first touchdown drive of the game.
And I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, but Montana Warren brought the boom, hasn't played these last few weeks. That was a key play, not only in that it set up ASU's score, but to me, it felt like the climactic moment makes it sound like there wasn't anything after it, but it was a realization of ASU's physicality that they had brought. I mean, you and I heard the Texas Tech defensive line coach for the game basically taking shots at ASU's physicality, saying that Texas Tech was going to push them around, that just like they did last year. Obviously, ASU players didn't hear. I mean, they were 90 yards away. But Montana Warren, Martell Hughes, these guys really made big plays. They were thumping. And just like you did against TCU, right place, right time, see ball, catch ball, head in the swivel. Martell Hughes with another crucial interception for ASU.
Yeah, Montana Warren was an unlucky guy in it so far. He, as a true freshman, broke his collarbone in camp. He was one of the standouts. I thought he was going to play a lot that year, right? Then he's been banged up a lot this year, not able to be out there. But what we saw in spring ball and camp, he's one of the more physical players on the team. Very good around the line of scrimmage. That was something that they needed to be able to bring in the absence of Shamari Simmons, who was a physical nickel. You need that 4-2-5 nickel player to be really good around the line of scrimmage against the run, screen game, block, getting off blocks. And he's going to push Kendrick Breedlove, who's done a very good job in coverage. But Warren was, I think, ASU's highest graded defensive player on PFF for the week. And we already know that Martell Hughes is like the next starting potential star linebacker for ASU. Cyrus Fiaseu may be back, so we'll see what happens with his status. But they're going to lose Jordan Crook and Keyshawn Elliott. They need other players to step up. There's been a conversation amongst them about the ability for Martell Hughes to do that, and he's had several really big plays throughout the season. Special teams, defense, showed up in a big moment. That's a tough play to make. Ball in the air after a big hit like that, and you go dive and make interception, and that really set up their score. And I think that I agree. That was an emblem of what they were really defensively for the game.
Yeah, microcosm definitely of just how well ASU's defense performed in that game. And as I kind of said earlier, that game-winning drive that ASU put up, definitely the two most impressive things from that ASU Texas Tech game. So our Sly offensive play of the week, kind of a joint offensive play. It's that Sam Levitt improvisational throw that he made to Jordan Tyson, and then the Raleek Brown touchdown.
And this was, like we mentioned it, we've done tons of talk about Levitt and Tyson, but Raleek Brown was another player who, just like you talked about with Montana Warren, felt like he's gotten really unlucky in his Arizona State career. But this year, he's really taken the reins of what we thought was one of the most talented running back rooms we've ever seen for a school that just produced a guy that is now going crazy in the NFL week in and week out. And he's taken the reins. He's been the lead back. Him and Damaris Robinson were the only players to get carries that weren't Sam Levitt, because Kanye Udo's sick, Kyson Brown out, and he did a really good job. There were always going to be questions about him in short yardage. He's not the biggest body, but all offseason, Dillingham talked about it, put on weight, maintained his top speed, maintained that explosiveness. When you run a crack toss on the goal line, you need strength and you need explosiveness. You can't have a guy that's going to take 5 yards to really get going, those are usually the bigger body guys. You need somebody who can put their foot in the ground, cut, and power through whatever's in front of them. Brown did exactly that on that play, and I think it's another kind of microcosm realization of the work he's put in to get to this moment.
You know what jumped out to me about that play was Raleek Brown had a cramp and came off the field for a bit. Jordan Tyson had been off the field for a bit with the hamstring, and there you have those two guys. Jordan Tyson was helping to pull Raleek Brown across the goal line, I should say, and that to me was like that illustrated that toughness that they were trying to tap back into. Jordan Tyson actually hit the back of his helmet on the ground.
He looked like he hit that thing pretty hard. He got up kind of staggered around. I hope he's okay.
Yeah, he did. So we'll see about that. But Sam Levitt jumped in the air after that play. These guys were so happy. They hit their dance or whatever. You asked me on
the dance that you and I are going to do.
You asked me on social media, what would it take for that? I said ASU's got to win a CFP game. I was going to do the gritty. Had ASU won the CFP game last year against Texas.
That was the saddest part as we were leaving that stadium in Atlanta last year. No CK gritty.
People keep asking me to, what am I willing to do and when? So I've put it out there now. But yeah, these are just emblems of your determination, your toughness, your spirit, the fact that you really want to win. And when the game is on the line, to me, that stuff, the teams that have more of that, it shows up. And yes, Texas Tech's defensive line coach was smack talking really bad, echoing the things that Dillingham had said about being soft. And ASU punched him in the mouth at the goal line. Bottom line, that's one of the better that's the best defense that ASU is going to play this season, in my opinion. And ASU got the best of them.
Absolutely, and it was important that they did so because, like we mentioned at the top of the podcast, if ASU had lost that game, Big 12, the championship game chances down to just about 0. So we're going to take a look just at kind of the big picture as to the Big 12 race right now, kind of where the top 5 teams stand. So that's what you're looking at on your screen right now. The Sun Devils 3-1 in conference play. That lone loss obviously came to Utah last week. Next up, they'll play Houston at home, on the road for the Big 12 championship rematch from last year against the Iowa State Cyclones. Right back at home, West Virginia, then over to Boulder to play Colorado, capping things off as it always does with that T-Cup matchup against Arizona. The 2 undefeated teams in conference, BYU and Cincinnati. BYU will play Iowa State on the road next week before ASU heads over there. That's just 1 week apart. And then BYU will play that very tough Texas Tech team that ASU just beat after that. Then TCU at home in Provo, on the road at Cincinnati, and then back at home to end the season against UCF. Cincinnati next week will face Baylor at home and then head over to Salt Lake to play Utah. 2 straight home games for the Bearcats, U of A and BYU, capping things off away at TCU. And then Texas Tech now in a tie with ASU and Houston for second place. They will play Oklahoma State at home next week and then over to Kansas State on the road. And then 2 straight home games, BYU and UCF, before closing out the season against West Virginia over in Morgantown. And then Houston is that other team that is still 3-1 in Big 12 play. They'll play, obviously, as I just said, ASU coming down to Tempe this week, and then West Virginia at home, UCF on the road, and TCU at home. They end the season playing the Baylor Bears over in Waco. So kind of a lot. Wanted to do that for our audio listeners just so they have a clear picture of everything that is going on. But Chris and Luke, what do you guys just kind of make of where things stand right now and how ASU has to close out the season to ensure that they're in that Big 12 title game?
Well, you've got 2 4-0 teams at the top of the conference that certainly after Jake Retzlaff left the program, if you asked me if I thought BYU was going to be 4-0, would have shaken my head. I am a Cincinnati Bengals fan. I'm not a Cincinnati Bearcats fan, but I know a lot about their program. If you asked me if I thought Cincinnati Bearcats were going to be 4-0, would have shaken my head. These are 2 teams that are both 4-0 now with these important 5 games left. And the way I look at it, the way I look at this race, 2 losses eliminates you. I think we have enough teams with either 0 or 1 losses that to make the Big 12 championship game, you have to be either undefeated in the conference or lose 1 loss. Among those 2 undefeateds, I would say Cincinnati probably has the easier schedule from here on out, but like we saw with ASU, going on the road in Salt Lake is really no cakewalk for a Cincinnati team that hasn't faced a really hard team on the road this year. Yes, they beat Iowa State. That game was in the Queen City, and their home field advantage kind of boosted them as such. Looking down at those 3-1 teams, we'll talk more about Houston in a couple minutes. I think their path to making the Big 12 championship might be pretty difficult given who they've played so far. And then it, again, comes down to those 2 preseason favorites, those 2 heavy hitters, Arizona State and Texas Tech. In my opinion, neither really have much margin for error. In the case of Texas Tech, you get a frankly, a bad Oklahoma State team. You go on the road to play a Kansas State team that's kind of figured it out in recent weeks, but is still not very good. But then that Texas Tech BYU game will, in my opinion, be an elimination game for who gets into the Big 12 championship. and who doesn't. Because if BYU gets one loss, I don't think Tech loses to any of their other opponents. Tech would have the head-to-head and get it over them. Meanwhile, if Tech loses a second time, just like I'm talking about, 2 losses and it's a chop. So that is the matchup. Looking at it from an ASU lens, should ASU go undefeated, that is the matchup that I would be circling to see who they might face in the Big 12 championship.
Gabby, do you have the ESPN FPI percentages?
I certainly do, Chris Cartman.
This is the
mind-boggling.
This is a thing that doesn't make sense to me, and I'm going to explain it after you read those.
So Texas Tech, the favorites as of right now, 39.2% chance to win the Big 12 title.
According to ESPN FPI.
Yes. Yep. BYU, 32.4%. Cincinnati, 10.7%. Utah, even though it's a 2-loss team, 7% chance favored above ASU, which is a 1-loss team in conference play. ASU just at 5.5% to win the Big 12 at this point. And then TCU, a 2% chance.
So here's where I'm going to disagree with you, Luke. I think that Texas Tech has a great chance to win out.
I agree. Yeah.
But if Texas Tech wins out, that means that it will have beaten BYU.
Mm-hmm.
And BYU also has to play Iowa State, TCU, Cincinnati, and UCF. It could easily lose one or more of those games.
Yeah.
And then Cincinnati has to play Baylor, Utah, BYU, we already said, Arizona, and TCU.
Mm-hmm.
It could easily lose 2 of those games. So, and Houston, if ASU beats Houston, Houston has 2 losses, and Utah already has 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
My feeling is that ESPN odds are terrible.
I don't disagree. I do not disagree.
I think it's terrible when you look at the eye test of what these teams are and where they're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
My feeling is Texas Tech has a great chance to only have 1 loss.
Yep.
ASU is the next most likely team to only have 1 loss, followed very closely or maybe almost neck and neck with BYU. But I don't think that, given that BYU and Cincinnati play each other and Texas Tech and BYU play each other, I think it's more than 50% chance that one team in the Big 12 championship will have 2 losses. I think there's a very good chance, maybe 60-70% chance, that we end up in a 4-way tiebreaker, 3 or 4-way tiebreaker for that second team, unless ASU also wins out.
I guess that's kind of where my confidence comes from, is I have a pretty strong inkling that ASU and Texas Tech are going to win out from this point.
So you just buried the lead on that one there, Luke. That's a big statement.
I mean, you and I talked about this before we went live. You know,
He also said at the beginning of the season he thought ASU was going to be undefeated.
Yeah.
Let's not forget.
But I just think we're looking. It's a numbers game. 2 teams have to play in the conference championship. I understand who plays who, how those work. Listen, Nippert Stadium is not an easy place to go in and win. Cincinnati could easily beat Baylor at home, could easily beat Arizona and BYU at home. The question is, will they beat Utah and TCU on the road? I don't think they could win both those games, but if they only win one of those games, they only have 1 loss, and then you're looking at another 1-loss team.
This is all totally unplanned, unscripted. Gabby and Luke, putting you on the spot right now, and obviously we can change our opinions on this later. Who will be the 2 teams in the Big 12 championship game?
You did put me on the spot there.
What about Luke? You go first.
You go
It's going to be
first.
Arizona State and Texas Tech.
I was going to say
They're
that
gonna
too,
play
but
each
I
other
kind of had to
again.
look at it for a second.
Yeah, they're going to play each other. The
think-
other teams have 2 difficult schedules.
I think it's going to be either ASU. It's going to be some combination of ASU, Texas Tech, BYU.
See, I disagree. I think it's going to be Cincinnati. I think it's going to be one. It's 2 of those 3. Only because BYU.
BYU does have a
brutal.
very hard schedule. The next 2 weeks, you're going to 2 of the best teams in the Big 12 on the road playing at Iowa State. Then you have to go into Lubbock and play Texas Tech
with a true freshman quarterback.
Yeah,
That's what people are talking about. They haven't needed Bachmeier to show up in a big way because they've been so good with their running game and just their defensive play. But this is a difficult schedule.
It is.
And I think on average they're going to lose 2 of these games. So ASU is going to have to beat Houston and Iowa State probably to get there. But as it stands now, I think I would have maybe leaned more toward agreeing with Luke, which is to say that Texas Tech is the most likely because they have the easiest schedule.
Yeah.
After that, I think it's very close between ASU and Cincinnati. They don't play each other. ASU also doesn't play BYU. It's very interesting how that's going to play out. But I think the 5 point whatever percent you said for ASU and Cincinnati's what?
Cincinnati's 10.7, so it's twice as likely, according to.
I think
if that's how that
I think
works.
BYU is way too high.
I agree with that statement.
I think BYU is way too high. I think it's fairly close between ASU, Cincinnati, and BYU for that second spot after Texas Tech.
Yeah, and another thing to look at too is if we're looking at these teams, only one of those two teams, BYU and Cincinnati, has the chance to remain undefeated because they play each other. Obviously someone's got to lose that game. So, maybe at that point you look at who's more likely to win that game. That game is in Provo, a good BYU environment. It's in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's why I took them. I think those two teams are equally as talented. I think Brandon Sorsby's a better quarterback than Buckmeyer, but nonetheless, I still think when it's a toss-up, I always go home team. I think it's a toss-up between those two teams when they play. I think Cincinnati has Cincinnati could easily could easily lose both of their road games. Should they only lose one, they will only have one loss. I think they win all their home games.
This picture could look so much different in a couple of weeks with BYU playing Iowa State and Texas Tech, Cincinnati, Baylor, Utah, ASU, Houston, Iowa State.
Stretch run.
It's a good thing we have a podcast every week.
Every Monday, right here to talk about it.
Yeah, you should listen in every Monday. We'll break it all down for you. And another thing too is, you hope if you're an ASU fan, if Cincinnati does win that BYU game, then at the very least they lose at Utah because, head-to-head matchups, one of the tiebreakers, and ASU lost to Utah. So if Cincinnati beats Utah, they have a leg up in that sense in the tiebreaker.
Unless it's a three-way or more, and then it becomes Kenny Dillingham's
wing
does
sauce.
Yes.
Ranch fall on
in which case
wing.
you just have to hope that ranch falls on a buffalo wing.
Yeah.
But we could go around in circles with this for hours and hours. There's so many hypotheticals. Still 5 games left in the regular season for these Big 12 teams. But like you guys said, we got this podcast every Monday for a reason, and we're at the point where this is probably something that we will get to and be discussing every week. All right. With that, we do want to thank our other sponsors really quick before we get into this Houston first look. El Bandito, Yankee Tequila, Devil's Liquor, and Devil's Vodka. You can check them out in McClintock and Apache at Devil's Liquor. Drink on the Sly is sold there as well, and all those different alcohols and Drink on the Sly sold here at Rack Scottsdale as well. So this is the ultimate place. If you're a Sun Devil Source fan, come on down to Rack Scottsdale.
Yeah, we have a promo code also for Drink on the Sly.
We do.
You can get 20% off Drink on the Sly. There have been a bunch of orders that have come through. I get an email alert for every single one of them.
Oh, nice.
Which is always cool to see when those things pop up. People on the Devil Sanctuary are getting those, and all of our sponsors are right here, the El Bandito and the Devil. I mean, if you're going to drink a well vodka, why are you not drinking Devil's Vodka? It doesn't really make a lot of sense why you wouldn't. It's an ASU booster who used to own the Dash Inn. People my age and older will know the Dash Inn was a peak establishment in the 80s and 90s there on Apache, and Devil's Vodka with Jim. That's pretty cool. So yeah, make sure you support our sponsors so that we can continue to do all the things that we want to do with our podcast.
Yeah, pregame, get some tailgating, grab yourself some Devil's Vodka, grab yourself some Drink on the Sly, make a little mixed drink. I make that joke every week, but I'm personally a fan of it, so I'm not going to stop.
Okay.
Anyways, with that, we're going to get into our Houston first look. One more big thank you to our sponsors. But Houston, like I mentioned at the top, impressed people more than what was the general consensus preseason. So, Luke, starting on the offensive side of the ball, what are we thinking?
Well, yeah, I mean, we were just looking at that graph of all the teams, their schedules. We didn't give Houston a lot of airtime, and you guys are probably going to know why after these next 5 minutes. But this is a team that is 6-1. Their only loss is a blowout loss to Texas Tech. It's a program that was not very good last year. But most importantly, it's head coach Willie Fritz's second year. This guy rebuilds programs. He took a deceased Tulane program. That thing was dead. They couldn't get 4,000 people to fill the Superdome. And he revitalized that team. They won the AAC back-to-back years. He beat Caleb Williams in the Cotton Bowl. And now he's at Houston. His quarterback, Connor Wegman, former 5-star, 3 years at Texas A&M, was going to go to the MLB draft. Now, Chris, I know you were a very good baseball player in your heyday. Prime Wegman, Prime Cartman could be a pretty fun matchup to watch.
I would have lost.
But he had 3 relatively mediocre years at A&M. He won the starting job at the beginning of his sophomore season, played 4 okay games, broke his foot, never got the starting job back, hit the portal. Now he's at H-Town, and he's having the best season of his career by a wide margin. He set career highs in yards and touchdowns. He's got 1,380 yards, 11 touchdowns, and most importantly, he's only turned the ball over twice. They don't ask him to do a lot in that offense. His average depth of target is 10, which is one of the highest marks in the country, because they only ask him to throw checkdowns or throw deep shots. Their intermediate passing game really does not exist to the level that other teams ASU has played, which should probably take some stress off the shoulders of ASU's linebackers. That communication might not need to be, as locked in as it was for that last game. On the ground, they have Wegman is a good runner. This kid he's a two-sport athlete. He's got some wheels. People like to make the sneaky athletic joke. He is sneaky athletic. You wouldn't look at him and expect a good runner, but he is. Their lead back is this junior named Dean Connors. You and I were talking before the podcast. You see him walk in the bar. You might not think that's a power 4 running back. He's 6 foot, 200, kind of skinny-ish white guy for running back. Got very good top end speed, very good balance, and picks his holes. He's a very smart player. Picks his holes very, very well. Just eclipsed 100 yards against Arizona, eclipsed 130 against his former team, Rice, earlier in the season. It's not an offense that you can just close your eyes and sleepwalk against. This is a team that is 6-1 for a reason. They do a very good job in close games. They do a very good job, finding that turnover in the fourth quarter, just like you and I have talked about. They have. We'll get to the defense later, but they do a very good job not only turning the ball over, but avoiding those mistakes. They won't make those level of mistakes. They let their opponent beat themselves. In the air, they have a wide receiver named Amari Thomas, who's very good after the catch, but I think his route running left a little bit to be desired when I was watching on film. But when he got into space, runs a lot of kind of looping crossing routes. When he catches that thing and gets a full head of steam, he is quick enough to get by guys, strong enough to bounce off guys. A very good game against Arizona. And so this Houston offense is not spectacular in any sense of the imagination. I couldn't find them literally top 10 at any statistic other than average depth of target. But they avoid mistakes. They do a very good job controlling the ball, and they will make the opponent beat themselves.
Run game, screen game, quarterback mobility. Don't throw interceptions. Don't turn the ball over. Defense is pretty good, as we'll talk about. I just think you could tell that the coaching and what they're trying to do, it all is very integrated and seamless.
Yes.
So I haven't done a deep dive yet on Houston. I'm looking forward to doing that. We'll talk a lot more about them in the Thursday podcast. But again, their schedule hasn't really tested them that much, other than they beat Arizona or whatever. But Texas Tech knocked the doors off of them.
It was never close. The final score was it says a 3-touchdown game. It was a 5-touchdown game the entire time, and Wegman ran for a score in the fourth.
That was the game I watched the most of. But the thing that Dillingham said today that I think will perk the ears of ASU fans is they do some quarterback triple option stuff.
Yes, they do. Yep.
And they have a pretty athletic quarterback. And ASU just handle that well against Texas Tech. So this might be a little bit more structurally similar to, in some ways, to what Utah did. We'll see. And that's something that ASU didn't handle very well. So that's the aspect of this game I'm looking forward to the most, because I think ASU secondary is going to bottle up. They don't have that verticality.
Agreed.
As long as they don't, slip an RPO behind somebody where it's like a fake block release. I don't think that they're going to have explosives that much, but methodically they can move the football, and let's see what happens with that.
And another important thing to note, they have the worst pass blocking grade in the Big 12, according to Pro Football Focus. It starts with a 3. I know a lot about grades. That's a bad grade. This is the kind of game where Clayton Smith, Prince Dover could pin their ears back, really get around the edge on Wegman. You just have to hold contained with the linebackers and the middle of the defensive line if you want to really feast in that.
But they may not, though, because that's why they get the ball out so quickly and have such short passes, is the coaches know this is a vulnerability, and they overcome that, which speaks to the good coaching that they have.
And defensively, we saw ASU's offense. We were just talking about how impressive Sam Levitt was. What's he going to be up against this weekend?
Well, he's going up against a defensive line that is second in sacks since conference play started. They don't have anybody on their defense with more than a single sack, except for a cornerback, which I think is the perfect representation of the amount of designed blitzes they have. This is not a freakishly athletic front seven that is just going to win on their own. They generate their own pressure, and they do a pretty good job of it compared to other teams in the Big 12. Like I said, they've led the conference in sacks since conference play started. So again, we'll be on Levitt, and I believe it's going to really test the communication of the interior of ASU's defensive line, IDing the mic, IDing who's coming, who's blocking, how you might deal with a stunt, because a lot of this pressure is almost inauthentically generated. They run these basically defensive plays to get these guys pressure on the quarterback. They are number 1 in the Big 12 in forced fumbles. You and I talked about it. ASU put the ball, Gabby talked, we all talked about it. ASU put the ball on the ground twice against Texas Tech. They got pretty lucky. It could have gotten pretty, hairy for ASU, but they got pretty lucky. They fell on the ball both times. They were going to have all those points of contact when they carry it
And I'll do a deep dive on their personnel and all that for Thursday. But I think that this was a very good sequencing of ASU getting Texas Tech and then Houston. Because against Texas Tech, again, they had the pass rush capability, dynamic athletes. They were able to get a lot accomplished at the line of scrimmage. And Houston's not going to be a better version of that. Like, they're going to be able to manufacture stuff, but ASU's been so good at getting the ball out to its tight ends, running backs in this last week that I feel like it sets up well for ASU going into this game. We'll see if I'm proven right or incorrect.
Well, definitely a lot more to come in our Thursday podcast that you guys will do this week with Jacob. A full deep dive, like you said. Chris will give all of his analysis. I'm not sure. Do we have a Houston beat reporter coming on the podcast this week?
I haven't asked yet, but I'm going to try to get one.
Well, we typically do, so look out for that. Could be something that's happening as well. This is a little bit of a longer episode, so if you've made it with us this far, we thank you for watching or listening all the way through. Lots to be excited about if you're a Sun Devil fan after that Texas Tech game, and we will have you covered through it all. Make sure you're subscribed to Sun Devil Source, ASU247.com, for all the best analysis and insight as into this ASU football program. Basketball season starting soon. We got our hockey coverage going, and then we do, of course, baseball in the spring. But that's far in advance. So thank you again for watching. I want to thank all of our sponsors one last time: Jones Auto Centers, DrinkOnTheSly.com, El Bandito Yankee Tequila, Devil's Liquor, and Devil's Vodka. This would not be possible without you. And thank you to Rack Scottsdale for the lovely hospitality housing us in here every Monday. We will be back next Monday with a very special guest. Graham Rossini will be on the podcast, so a similar event. We'll have details coming out about that as we did with Kenny Dillingham. So we hope to see a lot of you in person next week. If not, thank you again for joining us and for staying loyal to the Sun Devil Source podcast for all these weeks. It's definitely been a little bit of trial and error, but we're happy with the product so far, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So until next week, Gabby Chernoff, Chris Cartman, and Luke Lendler for Sun Devil Source. Thank you to Jones Auto Centers, our presenting sponsor. We'll see you next Monday.